Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another empowering episode of the Mind Over Habit podcast, where we explore the mindset, habit, and life experiences that help people overcome adversity, unlock their potential, and live meaningful lives. I am your host, Moses. Today, we are talking about resilience, disability, purpose, advocacy, and what it means to refuse to let circumstance define your future. Too often, society focuses on limitation instead of possibility. But what happens when someone chooses to focus on what they can do rather than what they can't? What happens when adversity becomes fuel for purpose? Joining us today is Tracee Lydia Garner, an international best-selling author, speaker, disability advocate, writing coach, and founder of Garner Solution LLC. As the author of 18 books and a passionate advocate for people with disability, Tracee has dedicated her life to helping others overcome barriers, pursue their goals, and live independently and confidently. Tracee, welcome to Mind Over Habit podcast.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here on Mind Over Habit podcast, Tracee. So, and to our listeners, our guest today embodies resilience, determination, and purpose. Tracee Garner has spent years helping others understand that disability does not diminish human potential. Through her books, coaching programs, speaking engagement, and advocacy work, she empowers individuals to challenge limiting belief and create lives filled with achievement and meaning. Her story often valuable lesson of after perseverance, optimism, independence, faith, and importance of seeing people for who they are rather than focusing solely on their challenges. Tracee, we are honored to have you with us today once again.
Thank you.
For those meeting you for the first time, can you share your journey
hmm
and what inspired you work as an author, coach, and disability advocate?
Yeah, sure. What inspired me mostly, and where I started from was just as a regular, normal, typically functioning child until about 2 years old when I started having trouble walking and would fall down a lot. There was something wrong, obviously, and so I was taken to the doctor to see what was wrong. They did a biopsy and determined that I had a form of muscular dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy is a neuromuscular disease that affects your muscles over time and weakens them. And so I actually walked with crutches and being able to hold on to the wall and things and scoot around until I was about 10 years old. Then I began using a wheelchair full time. So that kind of shaped who I am. A lot of adversity, but honestly, I really did not feel adversity until I got to college, until my years now as late 40s something woman, African American woman with disabilities, Black woman, whatever people use, and so it's manifesting itself more as I age, but K through 12, honestly, I was very optimistic, very happy go lucky child, and just learned to adapt. And I use humor, kind of a self deprecating humor, talking about myself, making fun of myself to kind of relax people. It just helped find an end to conversing with people. Once people laugh with you or even at you, they're kind of like, oh, you're pretty down to earth. So I just use humor and kind of as an intro to people discovering more about me. And later in my teenage years, I learned and went through a program called Partners in Policy Making. That was a wonderful program, but it teaches people with disabilities and parents of disabled children how to advocate. And so it was really at that time, 20 something years old, I went through the program. It's a 9-month educational program, and it really gave me voice, gave me like how to use my voice, how to speak up for myself, how to tell policy holders, policy makers, Congress and representatives, and even local government, board of supervisors, how people with disabilities want to live, need to live, and the access. So it was really the advocacy, the training, and the course that I took that helped me kind of grow and develop what I wanted to say. And also, lead others. Obviously, I was advocating for myself, but other people came along, that also needed to speak up and wanted to share their stories. And so I just became more of a storyteller, and that gave me not only confidence but peace, because it was no longer just kind of hanging out and doing whatever in school, but actually found purpose through that program.
All right. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, Tracee. So, what has living with a disability taught you about resilience and personal strength?
What living with a disability has taught me, I would say mostly about overcoming and being okay with your disability. There are some things I'm not able to do, some things I need help with, and I have a hard time, but I use my mind to keep getting up, to keep going forward. And also prayer and faith has played a major role in my life. Praying. My dad was a preacher when he was living, and my parents, both of them, just taught me about faith and prayer. And there's so many things I can't change, so many things going on, but I choose to move forward no matter what, and just do whatever I can. Some days I'm really disappointed about things that I might not be able to participate in. And it's usually, I'm only reminded about my disability when I confront something that is inaccessible. So going out with friends and the game didn't, go to a game and they don't have an accessible seating. And whoever got the tickets, they're like, oh, I forgot you're going to need accessible seating. I didn't get those kind of tickets and now it's too late. Those kinds of little things that happen, they stink at the time, they're horrible, but you learn to move forward and you learn to adapt. You have to, and you have to keep telling yourself that nobody meant to exclude you. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but people's intentions are usually on the up and up. But you have to tell yourself that this is just a problem that I have to deal with. It stinks, and but you will move on. You will recover eventually.
All right. So, many people without disability don't fully understand the day-to-day realities involved. What are some challenges people may not realize exist?
Say that one of the things people may not realize is just the attitudinal barriers. Sometimes you don't realize that you hold certain prejudices until you're confronted about them. People need to examine when they meet people of a certain stature, and things that, you know, some erroneous thoughts or beliefs you might have suddenly come to the surface. People meet me, they may not think I can do certain things or that I've worked. I've had a lot of jobs. I've worked for the government, I've worked for nonprofits, and we have to challenge what we think. Somebody might think, well, you got a job with the government, like federal government, like yes, and so it's like, why do we place such limitations on what we see someone in a wheelchair or who has crutches or who has a speech difficulty, or who has any number of kind of disability? Why do we automatically place limitations on people when we haven't even encountered many people at all with different disabilities? Why don't we just assume that people do, and I have done what I said I've done, right? Even people in a position to hire you, right? You roll up in your wheelchair, let's say Moses, you're my potential employer, and you know that, something's, there's a couple tasks, and you automatically assume that I can't do them. Well, I was able to read the job description. I understand the English language, and I can discern for myself that I think I can do all of the things listed here. Give me the opportunity to show you. And instead of assuming that I can't do it, right? You have no idea what I'm capable of. And so I just think that we place so many limitations on people, and that those are the barriers that we face. Barriers are so much more about attitude that another person has, the view of you, than it is about physical barriers, right? Because attitude says, let me make this building accessible. People with disabilities might want to visit, right? And there are standards and laws to, make sure those things get done, but people don't always implement them. People don't always think in a universal type of way about accessibility. So the barriers are not just physical, but they're held by people, erroneous thoughts and ideas about other people's capabilities. And that just should not be.
All right. You often speak about having a can do attitude. Where did that mindset come from?
Well, I think it came just from living. I there are some things I have limitations. Let's be real. But I've often found ways to fix them, ways to adaptive cooking. Let's say, for instance, some of the stoves, the sink isn't accessible. I've found ways around that to make a meal, to get things moved around. Let's say a box needs to be moved. Well, I push the box with my wheelchair. I'm not going to let it sit there and be in the way. I'm going to actually move it out of my way using my wheelchair. So I just think that we have people with disabilities are adaptable because we've had to be. Before we even get up, we have to think about, how am I going to do this? Who's going to be here to help me? I have caregivers and they are wonderful. They help me every single day. But every now and then we confront something like, what if the lift breaks? And I got to find another way to get in my chair. They don't know what to do, but I've had the lift break before. The wheelchair has broken down before. So you have to, you can sit there and cry, but honestly, and I have sat there and cried and just needed a moment to get myself together and to think again, like, how are we going to fix this? How am I going when the van breaks down and I can't go to the place I need to go? Well, thank God. One thing, I need to have money because I need to pay a taxi, right? And taxis are very expensive here to get around and get to where you want to go. But, just because we're confronted with something, we have to come up with a solution. So it's because that has happened so much, that builds your resilience. Resilience is a muscle. The more barriers and the more things that you have happen to you, the more the resilience muscle will be like, okay, it's our turn. Let's work this out.
Wow. So, what are some of the biggest barrier people with disability face today, both physically and socially?
There's so many. I already mentioned the attitudinal barriers, physical barriers to get into buildings. I think in another podcast, I mentioned that churches and hospitals and doctors are some of the biggest barriers that we continue to face. I still see a lot of doctors telling people with disabilities, oh, you should just go on Social Security. Never assessing their aptitude and their ability to work and get a job where they can have more income and more freedom to afford the things that they want. No, just go on disability. Disability doesn't pay next to anything. So that should be off the table, at least until you've had an assessment about your ability to work. And you should desire to work if you can. And I really want to strongly say, if you can. I don't want to be, everybody should work, everybody's capable. But I do think that we let people place limitations on us as far as what we're able to do. Doctor says, I can't do it. I just can't do it. Have you tried? Are you listening to the doctor? Or are you trying for yourself to make a determination about you? The doctor should not be around. The doctor doesn't even know how to apply for disability. And I say that because I do. That's mostly what I do in my work, is help people apply for disability benefits. But even some people I meet, I'm like, if you can talk, you can probably answer phones. If you can hear, you can probably help, other people with note taking and work in a school. You could work at a call center. You can work in customer service. You only need your mouth and the ability to hear. And sometimes you don't even need that because you can get calls transcribed. So there's just so much out here for us to do. The barriers are just people, as I mentioned, and then church. The religious models still say that, people should be healed and cured, not everybody's going to be cured. Yes, God is still doing miracles. I do not dispute that. I do not discount God's ability to heal someone from a chronic condition. But, the reality is you still need to live. And sometimes churches further promote that something is wrong with you because you have a disability. And so that's, a lot of religion, still a lot of laying on hands. And people have actually died from laying on hands because too many people laid on them. That person couldn't breathe. And there has been a couple of different news stories about that. So bent on trying to heal someone that you actually can further injure them, even fatally injure them. So, and why is that? We not stand the disability, or the disability was an inconvenience to you? That's the question I really have, is who is the disability inconveniencing? I'm the one who has to live with it. I'm okay with it, and you do the best you can with the tools you have. But other people act like disability is such an inconvenience and they don't even live with it. So just so much work to be done. Other things like transportation, affordable housing, all these things we already know, access to healthcare, especially for women, more accessible facilities, more, I would say even women's health, like breast exams while you're in a wheelchair or you have a mobility disability, gynecological exams, those things, even in the US, we still lack access to. And you even have to get past the barriers of the doctor. Well, oh my God, I never really helped someone in a wheelchair. How are we going to do this? That is not a welcoming attitude to have. And I go and I see you and I hope you're going to help me and help me have, maybe a cervical exam to look for cancer, God forbid. And your first thing is, how are we going to do this? That is embarrassing. It dissuades people. It makes people not want to come out and ever go to the doctor again. So those are a gazillion barriers, but those are just some of them.
Thank you so much for that response, Tracy. So, you have spoken openly about battling for access to resources, including obtaining a modified vehicle. What did that experience teach you about perseverance and self advocacy?
That experience taught me so much. It's still even painful all these years later. I've tried to make peace with my battle with the state to get my vehicle modified and get funding assistance for that. I mentioned in another interview that I was denied 7 times by a counselor who I believe was somewhat prejudiced. And so it taught me that, we need to ask for change sooner. I shouldn't have gone through 7 denials or 7 rejections for the same thing. I should have probably asked for a new counselor at, the 3rd denial. And I just had the wherewithal to keep appealing. But there are other people who give up during the 1st denial. Some people would have said, okay, fine, it's not meant for me to have. I don't think I can do this. And it's not easy. Every denial is not easy. Every rejection that you receive is really, really hard. And you honestly internalize that to make you start thinking, is something wrong with me? Am I doing something wrong? I saw a friend who was a white male. He actually drove by my house with his instructor when he was learning to drive with the modifications and the hand controls. And when I saw him, I was like, wow. Like, I wonder what he went through to get his modifications. And then I begin to think he probably didn't go through anything. They probably just gave them to him because he is who he is. He's white. He's a man, And so I just think that some of those things that happen to him, I didn't meet the same. I had a much harder way. So it just taught me to be tough, to not be afraid to appeal. And one of the things that happened too is in that process of appealing the no's and the denials, they invited me to a conference and gave me a tenacity award. So they were like, it's almost like they were saying, good job for taking us to task and challenging us on the denials that we gave you. You didn't stop. You didn't do anything. You didn't, stop going forward. You didn't stop trying to reach your goal. And we want to show others that that was a good thing. So it was so silly. I didn't know I was getting the award. If they probably told me, I probably would have said, no, I'm not coming down here. You put me through the ringer. But I was nice about it once I learned that I was getting an award for taking them to task. I was like, okay, just make peace with it. You got what you needed. You have your van. You're able to drive. It's a wonderful thing, and it's hard to get over some of those things, but you do it.
All right. Sorry, Anna, please. You can stay. You can stay and enjoy that conversation. You can stay. I'm not asking you to.
I can leave if you need me to.
What advice will you give to someone who has recently been diagnosed with a chronic condition or disability and feels overwhelmed about the future?
Yeah, definitely. What I always say to people is really get to other people who have similar chronic conditions. And even if they don't, any chronic condition, just get to them, especially if they're a few years with their diagnosis ahead of you. So, someone who's had anywhere from 2 to 3 years experience, talk to them, really lean on them, build a support network. Make sure that you're talking to as many people as possible because when you're, let's say you're newly injured, like a spinal cord injury, or you're newly diagnosed with something that's debilitating, you can really isolate yourself. And that's where the depression and even the suicidal ideation comes in. That alone time is the devil's playground, and you do not want that. So you want to talk to other people, people who are optimistic and who are managing their disability fine. Don't talk to people who are like, oh my God, I want to kill myself. I can't live my life from a wheelchair. Those are not the people that you want to talk to. You want to talk to people who are feeling optimistic, who are trying to move forward, trying to get back into a career, depending on what age they are, trying to go back to school. If they were injured, in their teens and 20s. So try to find people and then look online. Even if you aren't able to, let's say you're in a rehab facility, you might not be able to get out, but you can go online. You can ask for a computer to, here we are virtually. You may be in Africa. I'm in Virginia in the US. And so there is a virtual world out there for you to access people and to access resources, even if you physically cannot get to them. And the last other resource I would say is just to read as much as you can, learn, look for things about brain health and cognition, and just really fill your mind with motivation. YouTube is full of devotionals and motivating videos, and make a list. Every time I am sick and I go in the hospital, I'm usually in there for 3 to 7 days. Last year, I was in the hospital for 9 days. I pulled out my phone and I just started making a list of everything I wanted to do and I needed to do when I can freaking get out of here. Like looking at that list and writing that list and using dictation, while both my arms had IVs in them, really helped set my mind that you're going to get out of here. You're going to be fine. Look at your list. You have all these things that you need to do. And that just creates an attitude of there will be another day and I will not be in here laid up and waiting and people taking my blood, every day to check it and to see what's wrong with me. So make a list, dream, make a vision board. Those are all things that you can do that require little to low effort, low resources, and such. And so just get an idea in your mind of what's next. Even though I'm going through something right now, what is going to be next for me?
So, Tracee, how can listener connect with you and know much about your work?
Yeah, anybody can email me at hello@traceegarner.com. My name, two E's, if you please, Tracee Garner, GARNER.com. I'm also active on Instagram, and they can go to my website at www.traceegarner.com.
Tracee, thank you for sharing your wisdom, experience, and powerful perspective with us today. One of the greatest lessons from this conversation is that limitations do not define us. Challenges may shape our future, our journey, but they do not determine our destiny. Your story reminds us that resilience is not about having an easy life. It is about choosing courage when life is difficult. It is about believing a possibility when others see barriers. And it is about continuing to move forward despite obstacles. To everyone listening today, No matter what challenges you face, remember that your circumstance do not determine your value. Your obstacles do not erase your potential, and your story is still being written. Thank you for joining us on Mind Over Habit. I am your host, Moses, and until next time, keep building habit and that strengthens your mind, fuel your purpose, and empower you to live beyond limitation. Thank you, Tracee, for joining us once again.
Thank you, Moses. Take care. Bye.